Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, it's Jory. I'd like to invite you to my favorite workshop I host all year long, which of course this year is going to be a virtual event. Taking place on Wednesday, December 30th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, I am hosting the Let Your Shit Go workshop. This will be a meditation, ritual, and release of what has been too heavy to carry from this previous year. And we know 2020 has given us a lot of shit. So it is time to let it go so you can create the space for what you want to bring in the upcoming new year. Check out the link in the show notes and join me. I can't wait to let your shit go with you. Enjoy today's episode. Take care and be well. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I'm so happy that you tuned in today because I'm talking about another big topic in the practice of mindfulness. And this is a really tough, but really powerful practice. And this is the practice of equanimity. Equanimity is something that I, for a really long time, had a hard time understanding, grasping. I think it was because the word itself was difficult to make sense of because I wanted to think it was equal. And it's really not about things being equal. Equanimity is having an evenness of mind. Equanimity at its truest form is radical acceptance of what is arising in this moment, without reaction, without judgment, without denying or resistance or pushing away what we don't like, without grasping and clinging and holding on to what we do like and what we want. Equanimity is this mental calmness. And when we can practice equanimity, we become free of our habits and patterns of reactivity and judgment and expectation and attachment. And that freedom allows us deep, greater peace, greater calm, despite whatever's arising around us. It is so much easier said than done, but when you can have it's even a moment of equanimity, you feel it in your body when you've shifted from reactivity to responding, or from judgment into compassion. And when you can come to acceptance, things begin to shift. Now, this is a tricky thing you've probably heard me say before. People often ask me, but Jory, how do I accept what I don't like? And I'm here to remind you once again, acceptance does not mean you like it. Acceptance simply means you're not fighting against it. To have radical acceptance of what's arising in this moment does not mean you're necessarily happy about it. In fact, with equanimity, you're able to feel all emotions. You're just feeling them with this evenness without letting any which one take over, which is kind of the tricky part of this because it's easy to assume that if you're practicing equanimity, that you're not feeling anything, that this evenness of mind or this mental calmness or this energetic lack of reactivity means that you don't care. Because some people equate passion or anger with caring. So if I'm not reacting to something, does that mean it's not important to me? And that's not the case at all. In fact, to have equanimity is deep wisdom, to come to full acceptance, to say, it simply is what it is. Now, some people hear the phrase, it is what it is, and they dismiss that to mean you don't care. Or one of the words I hate the most that just make me cringe is whatever. When I hear the word whatever, that's just a dismissal. That's a denial. That's a resistance from actually saying or feeling what you really want to say or what you really want to feel. But to say with wisdom and with awareness and with compassion, it is what it is to say, I'm not here to fight what is. Doesn't mean you have to like it. It just means you're there to accept it. And you are accepting with a sense of composure, with a sense of presence of mind. Because again, when we are not being present, we tend to go into that reactivity That emotional brain takes over, the logic, reasonable, executive functioning shuts down, and we tend to go into that fight, flight, freeze response where we get a lot of emotional dysregulation. So in fact, you might even consider equanimity as a way of regulating our nervous system. Because one of the ways that we regulate our nervous system is we breathe, we name what's arising, but it's through that breathing that we're able to tell the brain, hey, I'm no longer in a threat right now. What's going on is okay, and I'm safe. And when we get that ability to feel safe, we no longer have the emotional reactivity, that fight, flight, freeze, where we are in threat mode, where we're in self-protection mode. So to have equanimity is a deep form of radical acceptance. And again, accepting what's arising does not have to mean you like what's arising. It just means you're no longer fighting it. So when you think of it as far as it being a regulatory strategy, what are some of the ways that we normally think about regulating our nervous system? Well, I gave you a hint a few moments ago, but one of them is through breathing. So if you find yourself in moments where it's difficult to access equanimity, it's difficult to access equanimity as far as your emotions, as far as your thoughts, as far as your behavior or your language or your judgments or your reactions. Try tuning into your breath. And it might even be helpful to adopt a mantra that you can repeat over in your mind to help you come back to that place of mental calmness. So perhaps that mantra is, it is what it is. Perhaps that mantra is, I accept what is arising without judgment. Perhaps that mantra is something around what you need to feel safe. I am okay right now. I can be at peace. Whatever it is that's going to attract you to staying grounded. Sometimes I feel like that emotional regulation can come in the form of grounding into your body, grounding into your feet, grounding into your hands, something's tangible in your sensory experience that you see, that you hear. Because anytime that we are dysregulated, I envision the emotional mind just taking over and it's just spinning on its own accord. So I imagine that when we come back into regulation, we are back grounded and rooted both in our body and in this present moment. So as I talk about this equanimity, just notice what's coming to mind for you. Are you thinking about times in which you get really stuck? Are you thinking about times in which you really struggle with equanimity? So think about what those times are, the times that maybe you have a lot of reactivity or agitation. Perhaps it's with difficult people in your life. Perhaps it's with situations in which you are struggling when there's injustice or when there's problems going on in the world. Like, it's an easy question to ask ourselves, how can I have equanimity when so many problems are arising around me? Isn't that to say I don't care? And again, it's not that we don't care. In fact, we care so deeply that we're giving it room to exist. We're not fighting against it. We're allowing our emotions to be present without any which one taking over. We're noticing our thoughts as they arise, allowing those thoughts to be present, again, without them taking over. Because when we can allow and accept, it leads us to greater peace. It leads us to greater calm. And this is the gift of equanimity. When we are no longer struggling and fighting for what we want or what we need or what we crave, that's not to say that we don't care about those things. We just have the wisdom to see things clearly as they are. And it's not about being passive. It's not about being a zombie walking through this world, not caring and dismissing. But having equanimity is being connected to this moment, being connected to having an open mind, being connected to having an open heart. It's a really, really tough practice to practice, and it takes practice to get there. It's, recognizing the ways in which we engage with what's going on around us that actually increase our pain and suffering. Because if you look at and consider the root of these practices are rooted in Buddhist meditation practice, in which one of the fundamental truths is that suffering exists. And all these tools of mindfulness and meditation and all the other in the Eightfold Path that the Buddha uncovered to be the ways in which to relieve our suffering are ways that we can bring ourselves greater peace, ways that we can reduce reactivity, reduce the pain that we experience. And so often when we get caught in cycles of judgment and cycles of reactivity, all we're doing is upping the ante of what's wrong. Whereas what we're seeking is to down-regulate, to slow down the heart rate, to quiet down the thoughts, to turn down the volume on judgment, so we can turn up the volume on compassion and acceptance. Easier said than done, as I always say. So to begin to practice equanimity, I invite you to notice and pay attention to the areas in which you generally are reactive. As I always say, you can't change what you're not aware of. So beginning to recognize what are those patterns of reactivity that you often get stuck in. Maybe start with something simple, like driving in traffic. For so many people, that's actually a documented source of a cause of anger, is an impediment to forward motion. So when people or things are in your way, preventing you from moving forward, maybe that's an area that you get reactive. So see if you can start with something a little less triggering, like sitting in traffic versus jumping right into maybe some of your most triggering relationships. And see if you can respond in a different way. And in fact, when I used to start to practice mindfulness, and I would actually practice in my car, because at the time, that's where I spent a lot of my time, and it was a great opportunity to put the tools into use. So I actually would practice equanimity around the traffic. And what it would look like is something like me saying, wow, I'm noticing there's a lot of traffic here. This is a frustrating situation, and yet I am okay. I didn't cause the traffic. I didn't create the traffic. Getting angry about it is only going to make me more frustrated. And most importantly, getting angry about the traffic is not going to make it go away. It's only going to increase my agitation, increase my frustration, probably shift the lens through which I see other things going on, and it's going to trickle into different parts of my day. But to have equanimity about traffic is to say, oh, okay, so there's traffic here right now. This is just what traffic is. I don't like traffic, and it's okay for me to be in traffic. I know it sounds overly simplified, but put it into practice and it becomes really powerful. Putting into something bigger would be, how do we have equanimity around the pandemic? How do we accept what we don't like? Well, continuing to fight against it, to be in constant fear or anxiety over it, to be worrying about how long it's going to last is only going to make our experience of the pandemic worse. To have equanimity would be to say, wow, I can't believe there's a pandemic here. Yeah, this is a lot of suffering for a lot of people. Yeah, this is really difficult to sit with. And it's allowing yourself to sit with what's hard without reacting to it, judging it, fighting against it, dismissing it, denying it, ignoring it, pushing it down. Because in my ability to observe and to create space and allow the space for what's arising does not add fuel to the fire of reactivity, does not add fuel to the fire of my anger or resentment or frustration. Doesn't mean I don't care. In fact, quite the opposite. I care very deeply. I just recognize what are the ways I can respond versus react to whatever's arising in this present moment in a way that's not going to activate greater pain, activate greater suffering, activate emotions in such a way that they're going to take over and shut me down from being present or taking care of whatever I need to take care of right now. So noticing where these judgments come up, noticing where your reactions tend to happen, and maybe adopting a phrase or a mantra such as, may I accept things as they are. Now, when you have the ability to accept things as they are, remember, this is a regulation tool. So you're going to be regulating your nervous system, calming down the brain. When you can accept things as they are, that emotional brain is going to quiet down, giving you more access to your resources, more access to your tools, to all that executive functioning that otherwise is not accessible when the emotions take over. When you can see things more clearly, you're more able to make conscious steps forward in what to do about them. It may not always be an easy path, but it wasn't about ease. It was about being able to see the forest for the trees, to not get caught up in reactivity. Because again, once we cycle into that reactivity, our thoughts, our emotions, our sensations, our reactions, they just continue to spin. And to get disentangled from that spiral is to respond, is to have the mindfulness to be able to accept what's arising in this present moment, to breathe, to enter into compassion, to self-compassion, to loving kindness, like I talked about in last week's episode, or gratitude from a few weeks ago. And to come into your breath, come into your body. One of the ways to help this is to visualize that vagus nerve, which travels from your bottom of your brain stem all the way up to the top of your brain, that it's going to get activated, that vagus nerve that travels up your spine, activating the rest and digest part of the brain. That vagus nerve that helps connect our brain to our body, that gives us the ability to regulate. That's why I like to envision the breath being cyclical, coming up from my root, traveling to the tip of my head, coming back down through my back, rooting me back down into my core. So whatever the different tools are that you can utilize to visualize relaxation, visualize calmness, visualize coming into the present moment with greater acceptance, this is equanimity. So much easier said than done, but it is a very powerful tool and practice to get out of judgment, out of reactivity, and into greater peace and ultimately radical acceptance. So hopefully this gave you some tips and tools on both what equanimity is and how to begin to practice it and how to be able to bring it into your life. I'd love to hear what you think about it. Give a rating or review on this episode if it spoke to you. And if you want to know more about how to integrate different tools of mindfulness, come join me in my Journey Forward Facebook group, where we have different tools and conversations, and I lead meditation so you guys can truly integrate these tools into every aspect of your life, because the ability to reduce reactivity and to increase responsiveness of whatever is arising, living with greater awareness, greater attention, greater intention, gives you the tools to have a greater path to freedom. Because true happiness does not come from everything being in perfect order. True happiness and peace and calm are a result of having the wisdom to stay rooted and grounded when things around you are chaotic. That true happiness is an inside job. It's not about what we have. It's not about all the rights being wrong, all the wrongs being righted in the world. It's about being able to stay grounded and stay rooted despite what is arising. And that takes practice. So hopefully you guys, like I said, found this tip helpful. I invite you to practice equanimity whenever you can. And when you do, just really honor yourself, even if it was really small. Honoring the successes will allow you to help build upon them. So thanks so much, you guys, for tuning in today. And I look forward to talking to you more next week. We've got a few more episodes to go through to finish out the year 2020 on all these little mini masterclasses on mindfulness. And I wish you to stay healthy and be well.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat. Visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.